These potatoes are so good that I needed to fix my lactose intolerance problems so I could be able to eat them. They are that worth it. That's legitimately not an exaggeration either. I went through the entire process of adjusting my body back to dairy. That way I could eat these whenever I wanted to. I'm gonna teach you the techniques and secrets to nailing these thin sliced potatoes, slow cooked in cream and butter and caramelized onions, and oh yeah, you're gonna wanna make them. I'm also gonna go a little in depth about the dairy adjustment process, I guess I'm calling it, but that'll come later. First, potatoes. The things we gotta get right here are the caramelized onions, the seasoned cream, and the potatoes themselves. It's easy though, don't worry about it. The caramelized onions make this dish sweet and delicious and craveable, so let's start there. Yellow onions are what I like for this. They're less sweet than the sweet varieties, which is a nice contrast to the potatoes. This is 2 yellow onions. Remove the ends and outer layers, then slice the onions in half. From the half, make slices from pole to pole, about this wide or so. They're gonna break down into sweet, jammy deliciousness, but we wanna use good technique to prep them. Once you've got a nice pile of sliced onions like this, we can move over to the stove. There's plenty of ways to caramelize an onion, but the only thing that's consistent with every good recipe is time. Any recipe that says it can be done within 5 to 10 minutes is lying to you. Don't believe them. I'm gonna show you a cool tip that I use from America's Test Kitchen to slightly speed up the process, but it should still take at least 30 to 45 minutes. Pan on hot, add a little oil, the onions, a large pinch of salt. Normally this would be where you would start mixing and waiting until they begin to brown and break down. You'd have to go low and slow and take your time. Instead, we're gonna add enough water to basically come about halfway up the onions and cover it with a lid. The water keeps the bottoms from burning, and the lid makes sure that the top of the onions cook as well. After 10 minutes of lid on simmering, the lid can be removed. Turn the heat down to around medium and start mixing. We've basically kickstarted a process that can take like 20 minutes before the onions really start to cook and actually break down. That first stage is excruciating, trust me. These are the onions after 20 minutes. This is the batch after 30 minutes, and this is them at 40 minutes. The real rule of thumb here is keep them stirred so nothing burns, and keep the temp low enough, yep, you guessed it, so nothing burns. For me, this pan had like a hot spot on it that got really dark, so I took the onions out, washed the pan, and put the onions back into the clean, fresh pan so they could continue caramelizing. Any of that burnt flavor gets on the onions and you're gonna be having a really bad time. Basically, your batch is gonna be ruined. Once they hit this beautifully deep golden color, we can remove them from the pan to cool. That's the onion piece taken care of. We can turn to the cream. For really flavorful potatoes, we've got to make sure that the cream is seasoned as well. We put so much work into making the onions delicious, it'd be a huge mistake to just slop on some plain heavy cream. Drop the cream into a saucepan. This is like 1 pint. Begin heating this over medium so it's nice and toasty. Season this with salt, some peppercorns, a bay leaf, and some thyme. We're gonna bring this up to a simmer and drop it down to low, then cover it, and it can just stay there, stay hot, stay infusing. This is going to infuse and become delicious, herby, heavy cream while we deal with the taters. Potatoes are the beautiful medium in which we can consume tons of butter, cream, and caramelized onions. I think that makes them very special. This is like 2 pounds or so of Yukon Gold potatoes. The waxy, floury hybrid of these makes for a nice baked potato dish where they're creamy, but still in solid pieces. If you were to use russets, they'd kind of just like fall apart into mashed potatoes in the long cooking time. Now you could just slice these thin with a knife, but a mandolin is built for jobs like this. It's way faster this way. Anytime you use a mandolin, you've got to be careful about slicing into your hand. So I actually picked up these gloves that are cut proof. It's helped me use this mandolin a lot more. The size that you're aiming for is about this, which is like a little bit over 2 credit cards thick. That's gonna be perfect for giving us nice layers and also making sure that they cook in time. Once you've got your beautiful pile of potatoes like this, you're not gonna wanna wash the starch off. That starch is gonna help thicken the cream in the oven to a perfectly glossy texture. Time to turn the oven to 250 Fahrenheit. Gather up all your cooked ingredients, the caramelized onions, the warm cream, along with some fresh thyme, some melted butter, I just melt this in a microwave, and a cast iron pan. I prefer to cook this in a standard cast iron rather than a baking dish because I don't own a standard baking dish. I'm not even sure there is a standard size. If I use this, a classic 10-inch cast iron, I know the amounts work for anyone that has one. So let's build this thing. Start by brushing some butter into the pan first. We want to make sure that we can get out all of those delicious layers once it's cooled. Make a ring of overlapping potato slices around the outside and then around the inside. The name of the game here is layers, so don't worry about using too few potatoes. We're gonna get like 4 or 5 layers of potatoes out of this, so you wanna make sure that you got some left for later. The potatoes are down, now we can add some caramelized onions. This is gonna be pretty sparse in the beginning, but it's gonna fill in more as we build the layers. We wanna make sure that we get a little bit of caramelized onion in every bite. Next, I like to add some fresh thyme, then cracked pepper. With all the cream and caramelized onions, we run the risk of this being sweet, so salt is gonna be incredibly important. For me, I only had salted butter, so I'm using that, but if you had unsalted butter, you'd wanna add salt with the pepper. Next, hit it with the cream and another layer of potato. Make sure that potato layer is nice and beautiful, that way you get good, distinct layers when you cut into it later. A few of my slices came out really thin, so I used those for the inner circle of each layer, basically just to kind of fill in that center gap. You're gonna continue this process of potato, onion, thyme, pepper, butter, cream until you get through almost all of the potatoes. My onions ran out first, so that was my last layer. I think I got 4 good layers with an additional potato topping. I like to make sure that the top is nicely covered in cream. You wanna make sure that the cream has kind of covered all of the potatoes, but they're not swimming in it. You basically want the cream level to be right at the top of the potatoes. This is why I don't give an exact measurement for the amount of cream, because it's sort of gonna depend on the volume and the amount of potatoes and the amount of layers you got, and all of these things are gonna come into factor here. I also like to put a little bit of butter on at the end, but my cream was very, very fatty. And you'll see in the end, I think that kind of bites me in the butt. Hit it with a little thyme at the end, some fresh pepper, and make sure that all of those layers at the top look really nice. This is what people are gonna be seeing. This is what's gonna get kissed by heat. It's gonna turn nice and brown and bubbly and delicious. So make sure it looks really nice. This potato layer cake can get a lid and then plop it in the oven for an hour. So about that title, it is 100% true and not at all clickbait. If you've followed this channel for any amount of time, you know I'm pretty outspoken about my lactose intolerance. I always stay strapped with Lactaid, and I usually take like 3 to 4 a day at least. I just, I eat a lot of queso and cheese and pizza and stuff like that, and I always have to take Lactaid for them. Recently, I came across this video by HG Modernism documenting her journey into fixing her own allergy. Definitely check that video out. Basically, if you overload your system with dairy, your gut can actually make the enzyme lactase that's needed to digest the dairy that you're putting in. Lactase is what's needed to digest lactose. What the intolerance is basically you just don't have enough of that. That's why you take Lactaid to supplement it. You're basically just overloading your system with so much dairy and like forcing your body to adjust. I figured if it worked for her, it's worth a shot for me. For me, the process took the form of basically just setting myself up for a week of drinking milk, and pretty much only milk. I ate some stuff along with it, but I really just drank powdered milk and whole milk, and that was my week. The first day was really, really rough. It was kind of honestly anxiety inducing drinking that first glass of milk. Like something I haven't had in probably 20 years, just a straight glass of dairy milk, was pretty scary. Like it felt weird. I knew this thing was gonna hurt my body, and so just like chugging it felt like the wrong thing to do. And my body was telling me, don't do that. It's like a cold plunge, just you're gonna be having really bad stomach pain afterwards. Well, the first 2-3 days were pretty rough. I had a hard time sleeping that first night just because of the pain. Second day was a little bit better. By like the 4th day though, everything was fine. Like it was shocking how quick it happened for me. I imagine for some people, depending on the person, it'll take a little bit longer, and this is by no means me telling you to do this. This is just me saying it kind of worked for me. The joy of now getting to eat queso and pizza and these potatoes was so worth the pain of those first 2 days that I am really, really happy I did it. It was shocking how well it's worked, and now I can eat pretty much anything. I've been eating whey protein bars and drinking milk and having full fat milk cappuccinos and just, yeah, it's really been kind of a lifesaver for me. I am very, very happy I did this, and very happy I get to crush these potatoes now because they have so much cream and so much butter, and I just pretty much would have never been able to touch these, even with a Lactaid. So that's kind of my story with it. It's weird, but yeah, it worked. So yeah, we take those. That's a win in my book. Back to the potatoes. That first hour is all about cooking the interior of the potatoes nice and gently. It's gonna turn those Yukon Gold slices perfectly creamy and tender. Once that hour is up, you can remove the pan from the oven and turn the heat up to 350 Fahrenheit. I forgot to remove the lid here, which was a mistake, so I had to go back in and do that later. Remove the lid and place this in the oven for 30 to 45 minutes. This is gonna cook and brown the top and thicken the cream to a beautifully glossy, almost mac and cheese texture. Here is where I think the cream that I used actually shot me in the foot. A little fat is gonna leach out, and that's usually from the butter, but my cream had so much fat in it that you could see once I was heating it, you actually had like a layer of what was melted butter on top. I was kind of double dipping in the heavy duty dairy department, and I think that is what made so much fat leach out of this. All that being said, this is totally all right by me. The dish is sort of all about lactose indulgence. Once you've got a nice brown on the top and around the sides, that's gonna depend on how hot your oven actually is and how long you leave it in there. You can take it out and let it cool. This is so hot and stays so hot for so long that you've got to give it like at least 15 minutes before you can really start to dive in. What I like to aim for is really, really nice deep brown butter edges and a nice brown top. If I'm completely honest, this smells like a really, really good Detroit style pizza, and that's from the nice browned dairy flavor and smells that you're getting from all that butter and cream. Oh, it is so, so good. The weight is totally excruciating, but it's worth it. The potatoes have soaked up so much of that cream mixture that it's like a combination of mashed potatoes, mac and cheese, and dauphinoise potatoes all in one. To me, this is pretty much a perfect potato dish. This is good enough to be a side for any steak, or you could do what I do and take it to a potluck and have it be gone within minutes. It's truly that good. Let me know if you guys are interested in hearing a little bit more about that lactose journey. I didn't want to go too in-depth in this video. I really wanted to focus on the potatoes, but I thought it was important to talk about. Massive shout out to the amazing people supporting me directly on Patreon through patreon.com/CameronMarty. There are a lot of people on there that supported me all throughout 2024, and I am just incredibly, incredibly grateful for them. I've got an insane amount of content lined up for 2025, so go ahead and subscribe if you like cooking videos like this. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. It's a good line.